Hello everyone, my name is Jeremiah. I'm a local leadership coach, trainer, and speaker here in Medicine Hat. I'm certified through the John Maxwell organization, and I own my own business called Envision Life. Today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about when fear paralyzes your success, grow. I love this concept. But first, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Jeremiah Benoit. I actually used to be a youth pastor here in Medicine Hat. I was a youth pastor for around 8 years. I led teams of youth groups of young adults who helped out with our leaders. And I was also a business owner. So I owned a construction company. I still currently own part of that construction company. I ran crews. I worked with teams. We're currently working on building this company up into multiple different cities. So we have expansion projects on the way. It is a lot of fun. One of my passions is definitely to be working with people, helping them to realize their potential, and honestly to just make life easier for people when it comes to everyday problems that sometimes we get overwhelmed with. And you'll see when we go through this webinar how a lot of the things that we deal with as human beings are oftentimes paralyzed through fear. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the aspects of who we are and how it plays into fear, and we're going to talk about some ways to overcome fearful situations. I say we get started. So let's talk about failure. What does it mean to fail? This is a huge word that is commonly used, and we learn this right from the get-go. Like, I'm talking first day in school. We are being graded. This is something that affects our everyday lives. This is something that we all strive to not be failures. And so what does that do? Think about it. Think about your first day of school. Some of you may not be able to remember that far back, but just take a moment to remember your very first test that you failed. How did it make you feel? Did you feel good? Did you look at it and say, hey, look, I'm awesome? Were you excited to go home and tell mom and dad that you got less than 50%? Were you ecstatic and prepared for the next test because, hey, guess what? You did something incredible? No. We oftentimes end up in our lives going through failures, and we have this expectation of what it means. We tie this to our identities, and identity is a huge thing because this is going to play into fear. So I want to look at the definition of identity before we go too much into fear. This is a beautiful thing. We're going to read through this. So the distinguishing character or personality of an individual is individuality. The relation established by psychological identification. 2, the condition of being the same with something described as or asserted as established the identity of stolen goods. Or D, and I love this one, the sameness in that all the sameness in all that constitutes the objective reality of one thing, oneness. The reason I really like that one is because if I go back to the original root word for the word identity, it's actually a Hebrew word. The Hebrew word tamim means sound, wholesome, unimpaired, innocent, or having integrity. See, I absolutely love that because somebody with a really, really strong identity can easily start to work their way through and navigate failure in a different kind of way. And when you can look at failure in a positive light, when you aren't fearful of those things, it's a lot easier to conquer mountains such as fear. And so I want you guys to grab onto this right off the bat. When we can work through identity, when we have a strong identity, when we are sound, wholesome, unimpaired, innocent, having integrity, when all of those things are in place, the following steps that we're talking about when it comes to dealing with fear, when it comes to dealing with failure, it's actually going to make a lot more sense. And we'll go through this as we go on. All right, integrity. I want to show you guys this beautiful. What do you guys see in this picture? Obviously, it's a glass of water. Now, if I were to ask you to describe this glass of water, and not just you, let's say I put it in a room, and you're at a round table, and there's 20 other people at this table. I'm going to ask every one of you to write down 10 things about this glass of water that you would say describes the water. Pretty simple, right? Now, it's interesting. Let's put a few out there. I would say clear. I would say wet. I might say it's in a glass. I might say it makes me thirsty. A lot of these different things are going to describe that glass of water. Now, if I were to take everybody's description around that table and I were to read them all out loud, chances are every single person is going to see an aspect of that water and they're going to describe it. Now, we may all describe it very differently, but not one of us would be able to say that the other person's description of that water was inaccurate. Why? Because that water has the form of integrity that we're talking about where it's always the same. It looks the same. Everybody's perspective on it is the same. That glass of water, whether it's here or in China or anywhere else, is going to be the same. Now, if you freeze it, obviously on a molecular level, it does change. Same with boiling it. But at the end of the day, it's still H2O. The identity of that water doesn't change unless you add something to it. All right? Now, that being said, if that is our identity, if we're going to look at that as something who has a great identity, let's put you in the room for a second. Let's say you're the person sitting on that table and you have 20 people around you looking at you. Every single one of them is from a different aspect of your life. So maybe it's part of your family, maybe it's a son, maybe it's a daughter, maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's a grandma. Maybe it's your coworker or your boss, or if you're in church, maybe it's your pastor. It could be any number of people. And you know what? It could even be a police officer, somebody that pulled you over on the side of the road because you were speeding or maybe going a little too fast. It could be anybody in that room, anybody that's come in contact with you. And my question is, if you're in the middle, do all of those people describe the same person? Because if they don't, which one of their descriptions actually describes the real you? If one of them says, well, I had a great experience with him, he's calm, he's collective, he's all of these beautiful things, and somebody else says, well, my experience with him wasn't quite like that. I had issues with communicating with him because he was very, very rough around the edges. He wasn't easy to talk to. He was very boisterous and loud, and nobody really wanted to be around him. If you're getting all of these different feedbacks, the chances are that not that those people are seeing something wrong, it might just be that which one is the real you, right? And so identity plays a huge part when it comes to dealing with fear and when it comes to dealing with failure, because if you actually are carrying an identity, if somebody took that glass of water that's you and started putting words into you, because we see that words can pollute your identity, what happens? Same thing that would happen if you put dirt into a glass of water. We start to see something that isn't as pure, something that isn't the same, something that is constantly changing. And now all of a sudden, whatever happens in that water and whatever happens in you might be different from place to place. So what are some words that can pollute our identity? How about things like, how could you be so stupid? What a loser. What's wrong with you? You'll never amount to anything. Let me ask you a question. Would you drink dirty water? I would probably assume you wouldn't. Now, I've had the opportunity of listening to a lot of high-class speakers, a lot of really successful people, and to be honest with you, the vast majority of them would be able to say they've had people in their lives that have said, how could you be so stupid? What a loser. What's wrong with you? You'll never amount to anything. What a dumb business move. Why are you trying that? And so on and so forth. And you know what happens is people who are not able, who haven't learned how to get past that fear of failure yet, they actually tie those into their identity. That becomes who they are. It becomes a person where you are actually believing to yourself, what a loser. Now, some of you may be saying, oh, I've never called myself a loser. That could very well be true, but that does not mean it's not part of your identity. Let's say you have a dream. You have this dream to be a musician. The very first thing you need to do when you want to become a musician is, one, you have to have an instrument, and two, you just have to start practicing. Now, if you've ever had that dream and you said, you know what your first steps are, but you have said, no, I don't think I can do that, that tells me there's part of your identity that might be saying, I'm scared to fail. Now, that is completely okay, because today we're going to talk about some ways to get through the fear of failure. Awesome. Now, I had a question for you. Would you rather be perfect at everything or be able to learn from mistakes very quickly? Now, my wife has this book. This book is about that thick. The title of it is 1,000 Would You Rather Questions. I'm going to be honest. I took this question from that book. My wife was asking me while we were driving back from BC, would you rather be perfect at everything or be able to learn from your mistakes very quickly? I instantly responded with being able to learn my mistakes very quickly. Now, that was just an automatic response. That just came out based on some of the things that I grew up learning. And you know what? I had to think about it. Am I that guy? Am I the kind of guy that wants to be able to learn mistakes very quickly? Or is there some days where I would just rather be perfect at everything? The reality is, if we are perfect at absolutely everything, we never have a sense of accomplishment. We've never had the chance to conquer something. We've never had the chance to overcome something. And you think about every success you've had in life, it's oftentimes when you've worked at it, you've achieved it, you've done something that nobody else could do. If I was perfect, if you were perfect, if we were all perfect, none of us would ever be able to overpass the other, because perfection means we've done it to the best it can possibly be done. And so, would I rather learn from my mistakes very quickly? Absolutely. That is huge for me. If I can learn from my mistakes very fast, if I can look at the problems and identify a way out of it, that's going to be the way that I want to go. Simply because if I can identify mistakes, if I can learn to get through it, and I can shift my mindset to look at failure or the fear of failure and say, look, failure isn't my enemy. Failure is actually my friend. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We're actually going to change how we view failure. If we can actually learn how to grow quickly, how to progress quickly, how to take failure and use it to our advantage, we will actually start to love learning. We will start to love correction. We will start to progress at rates that are going to blow people's minds. Have you ever been part of a small group? Or maybe it's an AA group, or maybe you've been part of any kind of little group, and you have somebody in your group that, or maybe an employee, and they all of a sudden come and they say, hey, look, I lost 80 pounds in the last month. Or month might be unrealistic. Let's say 80 pounds in the last year. Now that's a significant amount of weight. What is one of the very first questions somebody asks when somebody says that? Obviously, how did you do it? How did you manage that breakthrough? Now that person has the opportunity to share, to teach, to encourage, to mentor, to grow everybody else in some of the disciplines that they've learned. That person had a choice. They could have either stayed overweight, or they could have learned how to change what they needed to change to become successful, and then people wanted to learn from them. Now, because in Envision Life, we are a leadership group. We talk about leadership all the time. We are constantly trying to help people grow past where they currently are at. We want them to be leading by example. We want them to be people who are seeing further than other people. We want them to be the people that are world changers, that will grasp a concept and take that concept and explode it into such a big concept that they need people around them, and so they project a vision and it grows, so on and so forth. It's a beautiful thing. So, what about perfection? Have any of you guys ever thought about being perfect? What would it mean to be perfect? What does it mean to strive for perfection? I know for me, I'm a musician. I love to play guitar, I play drums, I play piano, I play a little bit of bass, and I'm also a singer. That being said, I wanted desperately to be able to sing better when I first started singing. I had an issue projecting my voice. I had an issue with so much so that my throat would actually get so sore when I was finished singing that I started to hate singing just because I couldn't do it well. One day, I actually took voice lessons from an opera singer. I don't sing opera, but if there's one thing about opera singers, they can project their voices very well. And so I learned how to project my voice. I started to grow. I started to learn. I started to actually learn the proper breathing techniques, where the air comes from, where you push it out from, right? I used to work out at that point, so a lot of my air came from my chest. It needs to come from your stomach, for those of you who are singers. I started learning these techniques. I had a lot of failure along the way, but I started learning. I started growing. I started increasing. And eventually I started to get excited because I could sing longer. My voice didn't hurt afterward. I could sing, and all of a sudden my voice became louder and louder than those I was singing with, and I could project really well. And I started getting compliments on my singing. I started to get some successes. I started to learn how failure isn't my enemy. Because I failed once, it doesn't mean I can't get where I want to be. So I was seeking perfection, and you know what? It would have been really cool to be that guy who could just get up and sing. And some of you may have that gift in areas of your life. You may just be really, really gifted. But there is something cool about saying, I had to work for what I have. Because here's the deal, guys. You aren't going to be perfect at everything. There are going to be things you need to work for. And I know, for me, some things came very easy in life. I'm a rather athletic fella. It came really simply. When music didn't, I got frustrated. So that's where fear of failure can also inhibit us. All right. I want to talk to you a little bit about being anything you want to be versus anything that you're passionate about. How does this tie in? Just give me a second, I'll show you. We teach our children, I was taught this, you can be anything you want to be. And you know what? I grew up believing that. I grew up believing I could be anything I wanted to be. I had friends around me who told me I couldn't be this. I had friends around me who told me I couldn't be that. And so you know what? I ended up putting limitations on myself, and I started to get fearful about certain things. And then I decided, you know what? I want to be a police officer. And then I changed that. And then I wanted to be an architect. And then I changed that. And then my family started a business, and I started working in the family business, and I wanted to grow there. And I actually spent a good number of years in my family business before I started doing what I do now. And the difference is I could still have been just a business owner running a construction company and been completely happy. But it wasn't what I was passionate about. I actually had to quit my job. I had to step into something that was completely unknown to me. I had to eat like nobody else would eat. I didn't make very much money for my first little bit in my business. And so it took some time. It took some time to grow. I was failing after failure after failure. You know what? The percentage paycheck, I was actually making about 10% every month of what I was making. 10 to 20% depending on the month of what I was making working as a construction manager. That hurt because my wife and I couldn't go on dates. We couldn't do anything. But I was passionate about what I was doing. There were days I felt like quitting. There were days where going back to work at a construction company was easier. It was simpler. It would have made more sense financially. And yet, I kept going. The reason why is because I wanted to do something in life that I was absolutely passionate about, and that's helping people. And so today, that's what I get to do. Here's how this ties in. Leaving my company was probably one of the scariest things I had done. I left the security of a good paying job. I left the security of my family. I left everything I knew and cared about. I spent the vast majority of my working life in that company. And I left all of that behind. If I had said, you know what, no, I'm going to give into this fear thing. I'm not going to jump out of the boat, then you know what, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I probably wouldn't be talking to you amazing people right now. But you know what, it took some time. It took some convincing. Believe it or not, the year I left, I had been arguing with myself about this for almost 3 years before it. So it took me 3 years to get my identity in place, to get all of these steps that I'm about to show you in place, so that I could take the step to actually moving towards something that I'm passionate about. And you know what? I don't want you to be stuck. I don't want you to be looking through your every day you wake up and think, I don't want to be here, whether that's work, whether that's no matter where area, if you're at church, if you're in a nonprofit, if you're volunteering somewhere, if you have put yourself in a spot where the other's expectations of you is the only thing holding you there, and the fear of letting those people down, then I want to encourage you, step out of the boat. Let's try beating fear. Let's get into something that you're passionate about. And that's what we're going to talk about next. I want to talk to you about 3 things that influence our behaviors and our beliefs. So this is from our DISC program. This is straight from here, or from our DISC program. So if you were interested in about DISC, feel free to come chat with me after. I don't have time in this webinar to go through it, but it is an absolutely phenomenal study. I'm going to run through these briefly. So 3 things that influence our behaviors and beliefs: role models, up to the age of 12, people that we look up to and want recognition from. We say up to the age of 12 because that is when our core beliefs are most influenced, right? So give you a really simple one. Why do we turn the lights off when I leave a room? Some people turn them off religiously. Some people never turn them off. That can be, I saw mom and dad do it, therefore I want to be like mom and dad, therefore I turn the light off. Vice versa, so on and so forth. Hereditary. How we react to situations comes from our biological parents. Now, sometimes, depending on how you were raised, I want to be like mom and dad. Sometimes I don't want to be like mom and dad. But everybody has had an opportunity where they've seen their parents and thought, oh my goodness, I'm just like that. Maybe it's a catchphrase. Maybe it's the way we react to something. Maybe it's how we laugh. It could be anything. But a lot of the things that influence our behaviors and beliefs is hereditary from our family. And then after the age of 8 is our environment. So school, work, family, home life, those are just a few. But oftentimes our environment at home can change. So our wives, or if you're a lady, then perhaps your husband. Sometimes we marry people who are opposites of us, and so what we thought was the environment we were going to marry into is all of a sudden blasted because our other half actually has a different idea of what the environment should be. And so all of a sudden now our beliefs are being challenged and everything is being shifted. And so when we're talking about 3 things that influence our beliefs and behaviors, we're looking at role models, people we look up to and want recognition from. It's hereditary, and then the environment. Now, some of those things we just can't control. Hereditary, we can't control where we came from. You can't undo that thing. Role models, up to age 12, you probably aren't wise enough to be able to pick good role models. You pick somebody who looks cool. And so that's where parenting comes in. Really, if you're a parent, that's where it's really important to stir your children into good role models. But environment, that is something we can hugely influence. It's something that we have big control over in our lives. And so if you're around a bunch of people who are constantly looking down at you and say, you're not valuable, you're never going to make it, you're never going to do these things, then you need to change your environment. Get out of that. Get around people who are a little bit better than you are where you want to be and go from there. We will cover that shortly. Expectations. I want to talk quickly about expectations. It is not wrong to have expectations. However, sometimes the application of our expectations can be. What do you mean by that, Jeremiah? So the expectation, if I expect that, I'll use my marriage for example. If I were to expect that my wife was going to cook dinner because she told me she was going to cook dinner, it is not wrong for me to expect her to have cooked dinner. Now, if I get home after a long day of work, I'm exhausted, I went to the gym and I worked out, I did everything I was planning on doing that day, I come home and dinner is not done, how I react in this moment is how expectation is applied. I could either look at my wife and say, hey, I was expecting dinner to be done, but you know what? I'm going to just come and sit with you, I'm going to love on you, and then I'll help you cook dinner. Or I can come home and I can tell my wife, hey, you're useless, you never do this. This is the 2nd or 3rd time this week you told me you were going to do something and you haven't done it. This isn't done and this isn't done. And then you start nagging on your wife. Or vice versa. It could be wife to a husband. All of a sudden, our expectations are creating an atmosphere where fear of failure is becoming something that they are part of. If you walk into school and you take a test and you know it's a test and you know if you don't pass that test you're going to fail, you're carrying stress. When we put expectations on people and we aren't good about how we handle it, if we aren't honorable in how we handle our expectations, we are actually creating an atmosphere of fear for people to grow in. It is never a good thing because, one, what happens when we're in an atmosphere where we have the fear of failure? We get paralyzed from our ambitions and our dreams. Two, if we are in an atmosphere of fear of failure, we don't grow, we stop growing. We end up becoming stagnant, we become complacent, we stop moving in any one direction, and we stick to what's comfortable, which is never good for anything, a marriage or a business. And so when we're talking about expectations, have them. Have good expectations. It's healthy. It helps us grow. But how we go about applying these expectations to people in our lives makes a difference. Again, I can't spend too much time on this. If you are interested in hearing more about that, please send me an email. Connect with me. I'd love to chat with you about it. All right. First things first, we're going to redefine the word failure. I love this because when we take a word, then when I say the word failure, most people are going to think of you missed the mark, you didn't do something right, you didn't hit the goal I wanted you to hit, and so dang it, I failed. First off, I want to separate failure from identity. We need to say that's not who we are. If you're going to let failure reflect who you are, let it show that failure is a stepping stone to success. I am okay with telling people I have failed lots in my life, but I am not a failure. The difference is I'm talking about actions in my life, areas where I have failed, but that does not mean I'm a failure. That does not mean you are a failure. Just because you've tried something over and over and over and over again and possibly failed, I'm hoping that you are changing the things you try. Sometimes it's difficult to try this. It's Einstein says the definition of insanity is to try the same thing over and over and over again and expect different results. Obviously, if you're going to fail, there's a way to fail. Change what you're doing and try something new. But if you're going to let failure reflect who you are, let it show that failure is a stepping stone to success. Second, failure is not the end of the dream, but rather a stepping stone in your journey. That's different from number one, because we're talking about it being a stage in a growing process. If we're going to look at life as a process, we're always growing. We're constantly changing. We're learning. We're evolving in our minds. We're doing different things that cause us to become better at everything that we do. And so if we decide we're no longer going to fail, we actually stop using stepping stones, which means we're standing on the last thing we failed at, or the last thing we succeeded at, and that becomes the bar that we've chosen to reach for, which means we've stopped growing. So failure and or success can't be measured by anyone other than yourself. This one is huge because it requires two things. One, it requires self-awareness and a strong identity. And I say those two together because there are a lot of people who won't take good criticism, and when somebody's trying to tell them they're failing, and so they just keep failing over and over and over again. And so self-awareness means you can look at who you are. You can say, look, I know I failed, and I know what I'm trying to do to get out of it, and so I'm going to proceed that way and try to get some success. On the other side of it, if you are that person who's self-aware, you know that you've tried something and it failed, but you have a way to try it a new way, or you want to grow through it, then don't let people tell you that you're a failure. Hold on to your identity, hold on to who you are, and go after your goal. Keep trying something new. Keep working at your failure. So one, don't let people tell you what your successes are. Okay? It's not measured by anyone else other than yourself. Okay? And two, make sure that when you're being self-aware, when you're self-assessing yourself, that you're being honest. Let yourself know, okay, look, I might actually be failing at that. Sometimes good feedback does come in, and that you are trying to grow out of it. Okay, next one. If you try to be someone else, they will always be better than you. This I can't stress enough. Remember that one of those, the very first thing in the influences of our beliefs was our role models. If you try to be your role model, you will never ever be good enough. So what I recommend, be yourself. Find out what it is you're passionate about. Find out what it is that wakes you up in the morning. Find out who you want to be. Who are you? Who is Jeremiah? I could probably tell you because I've had an opportunity to look at it. There are still aspects of myself I haven't figured out, and I'm working on it. But you know what? I don't want to be anybody else other than me. When you get to that point, when you know who you are, you don't have to try to be anybody else. Because if you do, you will always, always, always be better than you. And the fear of failure has killed more dreams than failure ever will. If you take anything away from this, I want it to be that one statement. The fear of failure has killed more dreams than actually failing ever will. The reason for that is because if you've never tried, you're already failed. Even if you have a 0.0000001% chance of success, there is somebody who will experience that success if they try. But if you never do, you never succeed. Okay? That was step 1. Step 2, surround yourself with good counsel. Actually, we'll review real quick. So step 1 is redefine the word failure. I'll run through them real quick. If you're going to let failure reflect who you are, let it show that failure is a stepping stone to success. Failure is not the end of the dream, but rather a stepping stone in the journey. Failure and or success can't be measured by anyone other than yourself. If you try to be someone else, they will always be better than you. And fear of failure has killed more dreams than failure ever will. So that's step 1. Step 2, surround yourself with good counsel. All right. What is good counsel? We're going to look at some characteristics to look for in people. So honesty is a big one. People of honor and integrity. Remember what we talked about integrity? Somebody who's the same everywhere that they go. That may seem hard. That may seem unattainable, but I can tell you from experience, I've been the guy that's different at work, that's different at church, that's different with my family. It doesn't work. It actually causes people not to trust you because they never know which one of you is the real you. I want people who know Jeremiah at work to know the same Jeremiah at church, to know the same Jeremiah with my business partners, to know the same Jeremiah with my wife, to know the same Jeremiah everywhere that I go. All right? People that can lift you up. Look for people that are going to see the gold in you. Now, seeing the gold in you does mean sometimes those people are going to say, look, you're chewing on coal right now. You're not making a smart move. You're better than this. I'm going to pull you out of it. Lifting you up isn't only about encouragement. Sometimes it's about a little bit of correction. And so find people that are going to see the gold in you, see you for who you are, and will lift you up whether it feels good or not. People that will walk beside you. This is important because nobody who's ever been successful, ever, no matter who they are, has ever done the walk alone. So find people who are like-minded, who have a similar vision or can jump onto your vision, who will walk beside you and see you as the human being that you are. People that you can, what you learn. Oh my, I apologize, I just saw that. People from whom you can learn something. Okay? That's actually number 2, but somebody you can learn from. Find somebody that you can draw from. Find somebody that can be a mentor to you. Somebody that's going to take where you're at and they're going to ask you challenging questions. They're going to mentor you. It doesn't even have to be somebody that you meet with on a regular basis. One of my mentors is John Maxwell, and I've never had a longer conversation than maybe 5 minutes with that man. But I read his books. I study how he talks. I study when I'm looking to do public speaking. I watch how he sits. I watch how he does all of these different things. And so I'm surrounding myself with people and ideas that can help me grow. Find people that you can teach. That's actually what the people what you learn is supposed to be. Find people that you can teach. Somebody that you can share what you've been learning with. Somebody that you can bounce ideas off of. I have found as a public speaker, as a youth pastor, as a manager, that I learn the most when I'm teaching because I start to say things and then all of a sudden I think, man, I need to write that down because that was gold. So find people that you can teach and impart it to. This is a good thing to do. And then find people with good habits and disciplines. We oftentimes undervalue how much a good habit and a good discipline, how good it can be for our lives. Good habits and good disciplines come out of good priorities. If you prioritize something well, you're always going to do what's important before you do what's necessarily urgent, right? And so being healthy and working out, eating the right foods, getting enough sleep, those are things that can be important but aren't always urgent in people's lives. And if you want to be successful, you need to be able to do those things effectively. So find people who have good habits that you can look at and say, I want to be like that. I want to be around somebody who has that discipline, because it will stir you on. It will cause you to want to grow. It'll cause you to want to be successful. You'll get to see what they're doing. It'll drive you to go further, and it's just going to cause you to be something that you never thought you could be. I'm going to read a quote for you. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I believe that's a John Maxwell quote. All right, so step 3. So pick your direction and don't stop running. This is huge. So we'll go through these real quick. When you run into obstacles, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Okay? We talked about the fear of failure. This one, I can't stress this enough. The importance of the first 2 steps that we talked about. So redefining the word failure and surrounding yourself with good counsel. When it comes to running into obstacles and not being afraid to make mistakes, those 2 steps are going to be key for you. Okay? Because they're going to be the ones that'll help lift you up when you fall, and they're going to be the ones that are going to say it's okay to fall. And then get equipped. Find the right tools for the job. If your goal is to get into shape, then you might need to find a gym. If your goal is to start a business, then you need to find out what kind of people you need to have around you. You need to find out about finances. You need to find out the skills required to do it. If it's a roofing company, you need to find out about roofing. If you're looking to start an engineering company, obviously you need to hire an engineer, or you need to go to school. So get equipped. Find the right tools for the job. And remember your why, right? Your why is tied to your passion. What are you passionate about? Is it people? For me, my why, I actually have it, I'm having it painted for me. My beautiful wife is painting this on a mural for me. We're going to put it up in my office. It says, I do what I do because I love people. That is my why. Why do I get up every morning? Why do I teach these webinars? Why do I coach people? It's because I love people. I want to see people grow. I want to see them stress-free. I want to see them succeeding. I want to see them do things that are important to them. And so you know what? Find out what your why is. Maybe it's you want to be a company that is outstanding in its field. Maybe you want to be the kind of guy that can come into a room and you get to bring life to an area that just seems dull all the time. Whatever your why is, put that somewhere you can see it every day. Get a dry erase marker, put it on your bathroom mirror. Whatever you need to do, remember your why. And then fourthly, your end goal is your vision. Your why determines how you get there. So you need to find out what your end goal is, right? My end goal is fairly large as a business. We want to be a global company. We want to help people succeed. We want to take people who are considered the underdogs in society, and we want to help successful people as well. But we want to take their limiting beliefs, their paralyzing fears, I want to turn them into successes and stepping stones and watch people get success. So your end goal is your vision. Your why determines how you will get there, right? So my why, I do what I do because I love people. Loving people is how I get where I need to go. You need to find out how you get there. All right, I will run through these real quick one more time. So step 1, redefine the word failure. Step 2, surround yourself with good counsel. And step 3, pick your direction and don't stop running. All right. I'm a local leadership coach, trainer, and speaker, and one of the ways that I want to help you guys out, I appreciate you guys so much sitting through this whole webinar. I hope it's been valuable to you. I know you value me even just by watching this video. If you decide that, oh, I just can't financially do anything right now, I totally understand. Feel free to take this video, play it over and over again, share it with people that you think this might have some value, add some value to their lives. You do what you need to do. I want to help you out. This is free for you. If you liked this and you want to go into more of those questions, you want to start asking those questions and getting some answers, you want to experience a little bit about what coaching and online training is like, we have a course that's going to be launching. It's 2 1-hour online training sessions a month. So it'll be the second and fourth Thursday of every month. And so for $100 a month, you're going to get a link and you get to jump onto our live training sessions that we're going to be hosting right on envisionlifetoday.com. We're going to be doing 20 minutes of training and then 40 minutes of Q&A, which means that You are going to have as many business people that are subscribed to this. You're going to get to ask questions, real live questions from other business owners. You get to find out a little bit about what some of the problems that we're experiencing on, and then we're going to talk about how to overcome those issues from a leadership perspective. And so if that's something that interests you and you have watched this webinar, I encourage you to look up, and then we have a code on here. It's #overcomefear. If you sign up for this subscription and you use this hashtag, this code, you're going to get to save $50 a month for the first 3 months. And so that's $150 in savings. So, and after the first 3 months, if you don't like the subscription, feel free to cancel. But I guarantee you, you will enjoy it. I want to get to know you. I want to be able to see your name on there. I want to call you out and say, hey, I'd love to hear more about your business, and just get to know you that way. And I want to help you succeed. So if this is something that you want to do, please shoot me an email, subscribe to this offer, and we'll see what we can do. If not, we love you. We appreciate you. We value you. And I'm so excited that you got to go through this, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.